And starting the recording. And I'm going to count us in. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, 3, 2, 1, and you're live.
Let's keep that this week, Henry. Hello and welcome to Catch a Lift Coach's Corner. I'm Kale head coach Melissa, and this week I'm honored to welcome Kale's IT director, Henry Pompper, to today's show. Hey, Henry. Henry, as you all know, he's kind of what we affectionately refer to as our Oz. He's the man behind all things Catch a Lift. Besides that, he's also an avid podcaster himself, a motorcycle enthusiast, and so much more. Welcome to this week's episode of Coach's Corner.
Hey, Melissa, I'm glad to be here again. I'm always here.
Yeah, I was gonna start out by welcoming you and thanking you for being here this week. But honestly, Henry, you are here with us every single week for these shows, for the recordings. But this is so fun to actually get to talk to you on an episode.
Yeah, it's one of the highlights of my week to be here. A lot of times, if we pre-record, I get to hear an episode 2 or 3 times before by the time it airs, because I get to edit a little bit. But usually I get to hear it on stream, and then I get to hear it later, and then it goes out and Kaylee publishes it. So it's a highlight of my week to be a part of it every week, honestly.
Henry, let's start off today by you telling us a bit about what would ultimately lead you to Catch a Lift.
So I was a contract worker for Lynn. I was doing web stuff, and I mean just little like web page updates and things like that, or creating email. But I was actually always interested in the veteran community anyway. My father-in-law lived with us for 5 years. He was an amputee. And, I dealt with a lot of his issues, helping him. And he was older, he had been in Vietnam. So he was an older veteran, not someone who would be in our program. But I saw kind of what he went through.
Right.
And I, wanted to be a part of it. I was looking to be part of a nonprofit when I approached Lynn about joining Catch a Lift full-time. But the reason that I went with that and tried to pursue that is mostly because of Lynn Coughlin. But also, I had Jack living here, and he was a big part of our life. So yeah, the veteran community was a big part of our life anyway. We would spend our weekends at the American Legion Post 40 up the street.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we were already a part of that.
So it wasn't a foreign community to you, the veterans
No,
community.
not at all.
You were interested in that and had definitely family connection into it. That's very cool. Let's back up a little bit before you even started doing that contract work with Lynn. How did you meet Lynn to begin with?
So I was referred to her. I did a small job for a friend of hers. I did a lot of contract work for a while. It's actually how I came to be interested in working at a nonprofit. I had worked at print shops my whole life, from the time I was like 16 until I worked there for like 16 years, different print shops. And I had gotten to where I was consulting with print shops and running print shops. And a lot of what I did was software development for printers, is how I got into software and web work. So I was doing a whole lot of that contracting, and I was reaching out to different kind of corporate things from screen printers. And that's how I found her. It was a very basic relationship. Like, I didn't know her very well. She didn't know me very well. I didn't understand the mission very well.
Right.
I didn't understand a lot of what she was doing because it was kind of a quick project job. And then we got into me redesigning a website and started to get really into it. And I started to learn more about what she does. I think what really got me involved was I started looking for a nonprofit project. So I was doing all this contract work. And I had been successful with consulting with screen printers and places like that. But I started to want to reach out and do something else, because I was just kind of doing the same thing. And I started getting interested in podcasting, just because I had free time. I'm consulting and working for myself. And I was really a big Star Trek nerd, huge Star Trek nerd. And there was a game I was playing, Star Trek Online. It's a big Star Trek game right now. If you're not playing it, play it. It's a lot of fun. And there's a podcast called Priority One Podcast. And I started listening to them weekly, started talking to them. I said, I really, really want to be a part of this. I want to be one of the guys that goes with them to the convention and gets to talk to all these actors and do all this cool stuff. So I stalked them. I went to a Star Trek convention and met up with them. I mentioned to them, the work that I do. And they're like, oh, yeah, we could use some help. And we got to be really good friends. Elijah Ilio Leo, the guy that runs the place, he is fantastic. He actually even came and met you and did a
Right.
consult and helped us get this
Yes.
going. Great guys over at Priority One. The whole group is fantastic. So I started working with them to just kind of be part of the Star Trek community, that the fandom that I was into.
Right.
And through that, I met a whole lot of really interesting people. And that really brought me to nonprofit work, if you believe it or not. The Star Trek community is not just full of sci-fi nerds. It's full of people who want to sit around and talk about what the future is going to be like and the technology we'll have and what society will be like. And there's a lot of people that are really invested in building a great future, and having a great optimistic view of what humanity can be. So I started to really learn a bit about that, and I was going to a lot of conventions because I'm podcasting and doing interviews with a lot of people. And I actually met Rod Roddenberry, the son of Gene Roddenberry, who created Star Trek. Fantastic guy. And I went to a seminar that he gave. It was like a panel that he gave at a New York Star Trek convention. And the panel was about how he had inherited this legacy. He had inherited this fame and felt like all he could do was try to do something with it. So he would take these times at the panels, everybody's talking about how cool the ships are or how cool the uniforms or whatever. And he would talk about what can we do to try to get to a point where we are more like the world in Star Trek. How do we make the world a better place? And, listening to Rod talk, it was just eye-opening, listening to somebody who has a lot of privilege and a lot of things that are given to him and say, I can do something with this, right? And his father had laid out this philosophy where people were going to solve their interpersonal problems, and we would have a situation where we don't judge each other and start fights unnecessarily, and it was really something to look forward to. It was optimistic. It was very like hippie stuff, right? But it's a good vision, and it's something that on an individual level you can always try to work to do something better for somebody. So after a few years of podcasting with Star Trek and going to Star Trek cons, I decided I keep going to these things and listening to people talk about a better world. And I go home every day and just try to make money and, do my own thing. And I'm like, you know what? I could do better than that. And that afternoon, I called Lynn Coughlin. Actually, she called me to work on something. I said, you know what? You probably need more help than just calling me once in a while. Why don't I come in there and just let me be a part of this? Let me do it, because I had been looking for something for like a year that I wanted to do. And I finally decided, this is what I'm going to do. And Lynn was into it. So it was very cool. I just felt like this was the mission. I had, from listening to Rod speak and him talk about what his vision of the future was and people trying to take a chance at making a difference personally, as little as they could. No one exemplifies that more than Lynn Coughlin, right? So when I really started to think about that, I'm like, why am I thinking about trying to start something myself, build something myself, when this person has done so much? And it's something that I care about. And when she was into it, it was the best day, it was the best day. So after maybe a year of that, I had pretty much stepped away from any consulting. I'm pretty much just working for Lynn at that point. And then when COVID happened, there was no choice. It was like, we're going to go balls to the wall. We're going to push as hard as we can. And we just nose to the grindstone, kept going. So I think after that, there's probably no way I'm leaving Catch a Lift. Yeah. There's no way I'm leaving Lynn Coughlin.
For sure. Oh my gosh.
It was just an experience that was life-changing to be a part of something where, like I said, I was already inspired. I already wanted to do something. And I found somebody who was someone I could follow. I'm not the leader. I am not the one who's going to figure all this stuff out. But if you point me at a problem, I'll solve it for you. And I'll keep doing that for you over and over and over again, because I believe in what you're doing, So that's where I'm at and why I'm with Catch a Lift.
Oh my gosh. That's an amazing story though, Henry. That's absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It's just terrific. So, like I said in the beginning of the episode, like we always joke that you're kind of like Oz, like you're the guy behind the curtain that really makes everything go for us. And there's so much behind the scenes stuff that you're constantly doing, whether it's on the dashboard, the LZ, Coach's Corner, just all the different programming you have to do. All that work, though, it directly impacts our veteran population. What does it mean to you now, today, sitting here, August of 2021, to know how many lives you are affecting on a daily basis and just the true impact that you're able to have through your work at Catch a Lift.
I'm thrilled, and I don't want to sound immodest about it either, but I do feel the weight of that, and I do feel how awesome it feels, and how cool it is to be a part of it. And I don't minimize that with like trying to be super humble. Like I know what we're doing isn't enough, and I know we can always work harder, but I feel super good about what I do every day. And I think that's the best part about working for a nonprofit, especially something that you care about. Because even when work's hard, you still want to do it.
Right.
You know, you're like, I'm going to get it done. So it's really, really cool. I heard a quote, and I think it was Chris Rock said, when you have a job, you can't wait till the end of the day. But when you have a career, there's not enough hours.
Yeah.
That's how I felt since I started at Cal. There's just not enough hours. There's so much I want to do. And I really, really love it. So
that's terrific. Henry, would you kind of walk us through what an average day kind of looks for you on the IT end?
Sure. So I spend a lot of time doing support requests for little things. Somebody has a problem with a phone or something like that. Because when you're in a small team, your IT guy kind of inherits a lot of problems. So I help with people's computers, people's phones. Most of what I'm doing right now is software development, though. So I'm actually sitting down and programming every day, writing out software and figuring out how things are going to work. And we're in an interesting like transitional phase right now where we've come from a small company that had a website and then had a website where you could apply for our program, and then had a website where you could apply for our program and get some information about your status in the program. And now we're trying to add kind of a social network and build some more interactive features, and that's going really, really good. And we have what I call programmers graphics. You know, we're at a point now where we want to start refining it and making it pretty, and that's what we're doing. So, you know, that's our next big project. We talked about it this morning. So, it's a great time. There's a lot of great projects going on.
Yeah, for sure. And just like that, though, Henry, you know, you've been at Cal several years now, so you've worked on a lot of projects. If you could just kind of pinpoint one, what's been your favorite project to kind of work on since your time at Cal?
The Jubilee for our 14 days.
Oh my gosh.
Because it was kind of like this, where we had a show where everybody was on, but everybody was on.
Yeah.
And it was a broadcast where we had a lot of people that were live. And then we had some pre-recorded content that we spent like a week building all the pre-recorded stuff. And then on the day of, I had to stream it all in the right order and with subtle cues where we couldn't talk to each other. It was probably the most nerve-wracking experience of my professional life at Cal. Probably one of the most fun experiences too, because I saw everybody that participated in it seemed to have a good time. There was nobody made like a huge technical problem. I had one part where I think I turned Jess's audio off and she had to repeat something, but she was a trooper about it. But that was probably my favorite project because it was interactive. The whole team was involved. Everybody got to work together. And that's the best part at Cal is we've got such a great team, and every single one of us is trying to work for the same goal, right? Like, I don't think anybody is here for a resume or a paycheck.
Right.
You know, they're here because they want to do the mission. And that is a cool thing to have when you have a team.
Oh, absolutely. So one of the other, and like you said, that Jubilee, it was like the culmination of the 14 days to Catch a Lift that we did last fall. It was our big fundraiser. We were able to really highlight and showcase a lot of our amazing Cal veteran athletes and almost just like what a day in the life is like for them. You know, community fitness, nutritional, emotional wellness. Henry, how does working on projects such as 14 days show you the impact of the work our team does?
Well, we get to interact with veterans directly, which is awesome, which has been a cool part of this podcast too. But when we have to reach out and have somebody record something for us or something, we get a piece of their story, which is always something we know is hard for them to share, but it's something that we get to share in. So projects that we work on, it's not usually like a pile of work to do. It's like there's a lot of good interaction that you want to have. You know, it's hard to explain really. I think because I've had jobs that I didn't like and I constantly compare my days to those days.
Yeah.
And I don't have those problems. So I do that a lot. But yeah, I think working with the team with the veterans directly is the best part. We've had a couple, like Jason Smith does recordings for us, and that guy always gives 110%, gives us good stuff. You and your husband give us great video. And I don't want to just start calling individuals out, because a lot of people have given us great stuff.
Absolutely.
But when we're calling you guys and asking to contribute something for a project, it's definitely not going into some like big corporation that doesn't care about it. It's literally going to hit my desk. It's going to hit Kaylee's desk and Lynn's desk, and we're all going to look at it, and we want to hear that story, and we care about it too. It's not nobody at Cal is kind of trying to just push it through and kind of get the content out. You know what I mean? Like we're all invested. So that's my favorite part. And that's been great about the podcast also, because we do a weekly chat, and when people join us for the weekly recordings, that's a chance to interact with them too. And a lot of times I get to be in chat because I'm sitting here recording. I might be too busy handling things to talk a lot, but I'm usually right there in chat and I can talk to people, and that's been cool. So anybody that wants to join us on these streams weekly, we do run a chat. I don't know if we talk about that on the show much, but we do have a chat running on Wednesdays at 1:00 while the show records. Even if it's a pre-recorded show, we stream it at 1, so there's still that interactivity. And the more people want to join us, the more fun we can have. So
absolutely. It is fun in there, and the vets that get in there, I think they get a lot out of it too. And we've been able to help a lot of people out of the comments. Like someone will just drop in and be like, hey, I need help with this. And we've been able to scoop up a lot of veterans out of that live chat too. So not only is it good for camaraderie and kind of team building amongst us, it also, if you need help, get in there into that live chat too, always. But, to kind of keep going with the Coach's Corner, Henry. So again, you have the great honor, whether this show is going out live or whether we are pre-recording it, you're always there and you hear these stories, and oftentimes you hear them multiple times. How have these stories kind of impacted you in your personal life, being able to hear them week after week?
So sometimes it's really hard. Yeah. In fact, we had Julian telling his story, and he tells it, and it's not that it's detached or something, but when he talks about looking down and seeing the ground or something, or looking up in the sky as he's like flipping or something, and those things are difficult to hear sometimes. But at the same time, that person's here telling that story. Yeah. So they made it, It's awesome. So they're not terrible stories. They're just difficult sometimes. And a lot of times they're fantastically inspiring. Like I was 268 pounds last year. I was 295 at my heaviest, right? And I'm a computer programmer. So for me to be a success, I need to sit at a desk and type. So I work out my fingers, and that's it. And that is not enough, So for 25 years, that was my life. Yeah. But then I sat here week after week listening to you guys talk about excuses, and I started doing jumping jacks because I can't do push-ups because I'm 268 pounds. But yeah, last year I lost 60 pounds. And then over the holidays, my father got very sick. And yes, this is an excuse. My father got sick. We had family problems. It was very difficult with him passing away, and went through depression. I gained like 25 more pounds. And now we're back to trying to get it off. I started again in May trying to get it off. But that's everybody. As everybody that's going to try to lose weight. And last year, if you'd asked me that, I was gung-ho. I was never going to put that weight back on. But what happened is you backslide. It happens. Yeah. And we're back to, kicking ass again,
Absolutely.
Which is good. But it wasn't until May when I was able to say, hey, guys, I'm really having a hard time. I'm starting to gain weight again. But I think that says a big thing about the team here, too, because I was able to call Melissa and Lynn, and say, hey guys, I'm having trouble with this. Can you give me some encouragement? Help me out. And they're there, they're there for me. We have such a great team.
Absolutely. Everybody
is so friendly and helpful. And, I've got great friends at Cal,
but that's just it, and you have had it's been incredible to be just a small part of your fitness journey, right? And to watch you to continue to succeed and push forward. And it's like, that's life though, right? The backslide that you talked about happened, your father got sick, passed away, these different things happen, like depression sets in, it's obviously different for each one of us, but we get that, we can empathize with that. And it's like, okay, yeah, life is smacking you in the face right now, but we're going to hold the line here and we're going to start pushing forward where we can. And that's what you did. And one of the big things with that, though, is being honest with yourself, right? Like, I am kind of sliding backwards here. Like, we got to get this train back on the track.
Oh, yeah. And being able to tell somebody.
Yeah.
Because I definitely went through a period where I was like, oh, now I've got to explain to Melissa why I'm 20 pounds up. Now I got to explain to Melissa why I'm 25 pounds up. Yeah. And I think that accountability was important for me in the beginning because I tried to approach it that way. But then after the holidays, when things got really kind of difficult, every excuse I could get, I was just like, I don't need to worry about that today. I'm not going to work out today. I'm doing other things. And I backslid. But I'll tell you what, when I went back to it in May, there was a night and day difference from when I started a year ago, because I started last June. And when I started last June, I couldn't do a push-up.
Yeah.
I couldn't do a push-up. I could barely do a modified push-up on my knees, trying to push up. And now I can do regular push-ups, I can do 8 of them. It's not awesome,
That's terrific.
Still over 200 pounds. I'm a big guy, but I'm getting there. And that's since May, I'm getting back to it and I'm able to do push-ups. I'm back to walking and doing things like that. So all that's been good. And my life never went back to being sedentary. I think I blew off nutrition. I blew off all the work you have to do.
Right.
You can try to live a healthier lifestyle and feel like, oh yeah, I'm still doing good because I made good choices yesterday. But if you're not recording it, you don't make good choices tomorrow. You didn't make good choices the day before yesterday. And you make a lot of excuses. And excuses are the thing that I kept hearing on the show, going back to listen to the podcast every week, where I'm like, yeah, I've got every one of those excuses. There's no reason for me to be like that. Like, life's not bad. I could get up and go do something. But through doing that, like I said, coming back to it this year, it wasn't so difficult to start again because I was already kind of on the right track. I had just kind of let a lot of things slip, right? So it was just about getting back into a routine, which I feel good about. But my lifestyle had changed. I had gone from being a guy who every single thing I did at a desk or with a laptop. I was always connected. And as a program developer, you're going to need to be typing a lot. You're going to need to be on your computer a lot, but it doesn't need to be your entire life. And it had become mine. Even my hobbies were like my work, but like I do what I love. So when I finish writing a program for work, I might start writing a program that I'm interested in or something like that. So everything is on my desk. So I made an effort last year when I was trying to get in shape. I said, I need to get out. I need to get out and do other things. So I started riding motorcycles again, which I hadn't done since I was like 17. Which was really, really cool.
Talk to us about that. About what was it like getting back on the bike after all those years?
It was like riding a bike.
Yeah.
You don't forget. Actually, you do. I hadn't driven an automatic, or I hadn't driven a manual car. I hadn't done any of that. My first license was actually supposed to be my motorcycle license. I got my motorcycle learners before I got my car license. And I was 16 and I was riding dirt bikes and stuff. And I was riding motorcycle a little bit. But then I stopped when I was like 18. I never actually got my license. I just let my learners expire. I never actually got it. And then I need to go back to it. So I wanted to start getting back out. I said, what can I do that's going to be cool? That's going to be fun. And I would go out and ride a bike in the neighborhood, and that's good. And I'm not saying riding a motorcycle is for your health. I'm saying getting outside is for my health, right? So, I started, I was riding a bike a lot and I thought that was cool. I thought, I'm going to go back to riding motorcycles. I got a $1,200 cheap motorcycle off of Craigslist and it's almost as old as me. I love her. It's a 1983 Honda Nighthawk.
That's awesome.
And I learned to ride again on that. Getting back on it after 25 years, I dropped it. That was no fun. But I haven't had any problems. I took the safety course. I went and did the training and the advanced training. So I've been through 2 rounds of that. And I feel like I'm a pretty good rider, but I try to be cautious. But getting back to it, it wasn't really hard, but I did have to learn how to handle the clutch and the brakes and all that again. But it's zen, for a guy like me, I'm working and I do what I do because it occupies my mind and it lets me stay like in the moment, right? Which is really, really important for mental health and zen, to be doing what you're doing and nothing else, right? And when I am programming, that's where I am. Yeah. So that's why I think I gravitated toward that so much in life, because it was a way for me to be completely absorbed in what I'm doing, and completely aware of like what's happening with it, right? It was a way for me to focus my mind. Yeah. And when I ride, I get the same thing, which is amazing. I don't get that driving. I don't get that doing anything else. But when I ride, I'm focused on the ride. And it's not like a fear or something. It's just, it requires your attention in a way that everything else in your life doesn't, because you can't daydream on a motorcycle.
Yeah.
You're going to be in the ride. You're connected to the road. You feel everything. And it's very zen for me. I go out there and ride, and I'm doing nothing but riding. I'm just enjoying the air. I'm enjoying the
That's
wind,
so cool.
just enjoying the ride. And now I'm riding a Vulcan. I'm riding a 2009 Kawasaki Vulcan, which for a Star Trek nerd, what else would I ride but a Vulcan, right? So I managed to get a Vulcan this year. I rode on my starter bike for a year, got used to that, and then I got the bike that I wanted. And I'm looking forward. Cal's going to have a benefit in September, and I'll get to ride with those guys. So that'll be a lot of fun.
That's so cool.
Probably the only one not on a Harley.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And I can really appreciate what you're saying about, being in that moment with that task. A lot of my day, like I always say, like the gym for me is my therapy. And like, that's where I want to be, like for, to decompress and focus and everything. But for myself, there's also another piece to that happens outdoors. And it's when I'm out hiking or when I'm fly fishing, and just something where I can take that in. I can just feel the air on me, or I can feel the water running against my legs, or there's something about finding an activity that you can do that's outside, regardless of what it is, and just kind of being able to find center or find present in that moment. It's such a good release and escape. So Henry, let's kind of double back here. Talk to us about the podcast work you do outside of Catch a Lift, about your podcasts.
Sure. So I got involved with Priority One podcast probably 6 years ago. And I told a little bit about that. I kind of wanted to be involved in the Star Trek stuff. Mostly that was about, I was kind of an introvert, and I wanted to get out and meet some more people and kind of be part of that a little bit. So I was meeting people online through the game, and that was fun. But I wanted to go out and do things at the con. So doing that, I managed to get with the podcast, and Ilio Leo, fantastic guy. One of the first things he does is he says, we went to a Star Trek con, this probably a year after I started doing little things for him. And I hadn't done any interviews or anything. And I'm with him at Star Trek con. He's like, do you want to interview this guy? I was like, oh my gosh, I got to interview this artist for this game I play. And I botched it. Like, I did my best, but I was so nervous. I was like a deer in headlights. And I was trying to ask this guy a question, and he knew I lost it. So he was very cool, and he helped me figure out how to do that. He taught me how to do interviews. And that was really cool, because I started to get to do them with, artists at games that I liked, or people who had been on TV shows that I liked. And I was really, really, really happy with the Star Trek stuff. That was cool. It was cool to be able to interview those actors. But I was always more into like the tech stuff. Yeah. And one of my idols, Doug Drexler, was a designer for Deep Space Nine and for Next Gen. And I had listened to like a lot of his audio and read a ton of his stuff. And by being associated with Priority One, I actually got a chance to interview him on live, which was fantastic. So it was like I got through podcasting to experience a part of the fandom that I wouldn't have otherwise, and connect with people that were a part of the Star Trek universe that I wouldn't have had a chance to speak to. But I also interviewed artists who worked on the new Top Gun movie. I've talked to a lot of different people, and it's been a lot of fun. Mostly at Star Trek Con, so it's a whole lot of Star Trek stuff. And my podcast, I'm not on Priority One. I get to guest on Priority One at Star Trek Con sometimes. And I used to do a segment for Priority One where I would talk to fans who had done artwork. Like there was a guy who had built his basement to look like the inside of a ship, which was a lot of work. Got to interview that guy, that kind of stuff.
Very cool.
But I started working with another smaller podcast that's also part of the Priority One's network, where I actually got to talk about other video games things. It's all video game stuff. It's a lot of computer nerd stuff. 40-year-old guys that like to play Microsoft Flight Simulator, that kind of stuff. But I do that weekly still. That's my outlet. It's a lot of fun. We mostly talk about video games like Star Citizen and No Man's Sky and Elite. And if you don't know those words, the podcast isn't for you. But it's not like the Coach's Corner, which has a purpose. It's kind of a way to goof off and a way
That's
to
cool.
experience things in the fandoms
Yeah.
that you're into. Yeah, it's nerd stuff. I love it. It's fantastic.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a part of your passion. Thank you for sharing it with us too. Um, Henry, toss out some advice for anybody listening that, maybe they're thinking about, starting up a podcast or kind of something in that arena. What kind of just general advice would you give to someone that's interested in taking that step?
That's a good question. I actually asked that to a lot of people when I was kind of getting involved. And I've never started a podcast. I don't have a podcast. I'm a part of a couple of podcasts. I help out here and there, and I host on one. But what I get is you're not going to have huge numbers. You're not going to be Joe Rogan. You're going to find a niche group of people that like what you do and make stuff for them. That's your group, that's who you are. That's the point. Sharing things with a community of people that are interested in things that you're interested in. If you go out there and try to be Joe Rogan, you're going to be disappointed,
For sure.
because there's room for everybody to make content and talk about the cool stuff they like. And there's an audience for pretty much all of it, but it's probably not going to be the mainstream. And as long as you don't go into it expecting some mainstream success, that's all you're going to do, don't. What I got from a lot of people who are involved in podcasting really heavily, because like I said, my involvement, I spend an hour or two a week working on the podcast now. It used to be much, much more, but I do much less now because I'm fully devoted to Cal pretty much. I don't take on a lot of extra stuff anymore. A lot of the people that I worked with that are making podcasts and it's a bigger part of their lives are people who are like, I want to do a radio show. So I'm doing a podcast. So I'm going to have hours under my belt that I can show on a resume for a radio show.
Right.
Some people will do podcasts and then use that to parlay into doing money to make or doing jobs to make audiobooks. A lot of the people I work with do audiobooks and are very successful with that.
Interesting.
So if you think of podcasting as a way to do lots of the things that you want to do, it connects you, right? And you're going to get that out of it. Even on a podcast like mine that's small, I got to interview a childhood hero, right? A couple of them, right?
That's awesome.
So even if my podcast only gets a few hundred views a week or a few thousand a year or whatever, I still got to interview him, right? That's awesome. So you kind of have to think, what do you want from it? Why am I making this content? You want to be part of a community. You want to be a bigger part of a community. That's a great reason to make a podcast. And there are ways to be successful at it. I don't think the Coach's Corner would happen if I hadn't been involved with Priority One and been like, hey guys, we should be starting a podcast. Because I don't know if anybody would have thought of it.
Yeah.
It was just something that I had on my mind because it was something I was interested in.
Yep.
And it felt like a good fit for Cal. So I remember the first one was me interviewing you like as a demo.
Yep.
And this is such a better way to do the whole thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But yeah, so, anybody that wants to podcast, go do it. Julian's podcast, Coffee with Julian, is really cool, by the way. I'm going to shout out to him. Listen to that one. It's cool stuff. But yeah, do it. If you want a podcast, do it. Just set your expectations.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. And that would definitely be sitting here now, like a year later. Podcasting was something that I was always interested in, or like I always wanted something like that. But again, it's always kind of like, oh, the time's not right, or I don't know how to do it. Well, you just have to start. And so that's been something really cool to be kind of a part of this experience with you and just kind of getting to learn and even learning week to week. And we continue to kind of tweak and refine, and it's fun. It's a fun thing to learn, right? Like,
oh yeah. Yeah. And it's cool to be in that position to be able to ask the questions that you want to ask when someone's being interviewed. That's really cool.
I want to kind of leapfrog us back here again one more time, Henry, and swing us back to the fitness for a minute. So, we touched on a lot of it, but I want to just kind of ask you now today, moving forward here, the second kind of half of the year, what kind of are your goals moving forward with your fitness for this kind of second half of 2021?
I need to be under 200 pounds by January.
Yeah.
I'm tired of being too heavy. I want to be well under. I'm tired of being too heavy. So I want to do that. Last year, I wanted to feel better. and being lighter wasn't really my focus. I was tired of like not wanting to take steps, right? Not even not being able to take steps. I didn't want to. If there was an elevator, I'd jump on them.
Yeah.
It's like, come on. I don't do that anymore. That's already done. Like I walk, but I'm still a heavy guy, but I never take the elevator anymore. Right. So a lot of changes have been made. I think now it's time to like buckle down and kind of push.
Right.
Because I feel like the things that I did do were positive. It just wasn't quite enough. So I think I'm going to start trying to focus more on numbers this year and more on like the technical aspect of it.
Yeah.
Because I've got to figure out a program that works, right? I figured out some lifestyle changes that made me feel better overall. And I kept those and I feel really good about it. And I think it's made a big difference in who I am and the kind of things that I can do. What I like to do is what I should say, the way I like to spend my time. It's opened my world up is what I'm trying to say. Things like riding the bike, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Going hiking with Tracy instead of hanging around and we might play video games or something. Now we're going to be like, let's go ride to the park and we'll be back tomorrow. Right. And we'll go someplace far. We'll go to a Western Maryland or something. Like we do that kind of stuff. Those kind of things are positive. I want to see refinement of what I started last year. That's what I really want to see.
That's terrific. And I mean, I know you already know it, but going to say it again. All of us here at Team Cal and in the Cal community, we're rooting for you. We're behind you. And, we're excited to be on this fitness journey with you too.
I never felt that ever until Cal. Like I never felt anybody like I've always been like the heavy dude, but I've always been, nobody's picking on you about it or anything, but you're the heavy guy, and I never felt that at Cal either. Nobody gave me any trouble. Nobody was ever like, oh, there's the fat guy that works at the health place. You know what I mean? It's never been like that. Cal's always been really cool. It was my decision to start worrying about it. It was my decision to even talk about it. There was no pressure from anybody. Team has always had my back. And I felt that since I brought it up. So it's very cool. Very cool.
What does it mean to you to be a part of this Cal family, Henry?
Best thing I could be doing with my life right now, without a question. There's probably 100 things I could be doing. This is the best of them. I don't question that.
I love it. I've got one last question for you here today, Henry. What does it mean for you to be Cal strong?
That's a good one. I think it means I don't sit at my desk all day anymore. I think it means when I'm not feeling good, I get up and I go check things out outside, or I call somebody and, hey, I got to work on something. I think it means not wallowing, it means finding my strength. And I feel like I've started to do that over this last year. Things have really been different. And I should send you the picture. I look at it sometimes. I have a picture of myself 2 years ago when I was too heavy to want to weigh myself. Like the highest I've ever weighed myself was 295. And that's because there's been times where I was just like, I'm not getting on that scale. Like I'm not doing that, and that's true. It's been that way for a long time. And I've got a picture of myself that I look at where I'm like, not again, never doing that one again. Yeah. And I was standing in a room holding a drill. I was working on rebuilding a bathroom. And I was like, man, that whole ordeal of working on the bathroom, all that physical ordeal was way harder than it ever had to be. Because if I had to do it today, it'd be way better because a couple times a week I get up and do something. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to sound like a smart ass over it. It's the kind of thing that's obvious once you feel it and once you really feel it. But until you actually see it, it seems more like, it's easy to say.
Yeah.
But it actually is easy to do if you do it. You just have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it a lot. Thank you so much, Henry, for sharing your light and talking with us all about all things Henry and Catch a Lift today. It's an honor to talk with you finally live on here. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me. I had a ball. I'm glad to be a part of it.
That's it for this week's episode of Coach's Corner. We will return next Wednesday at 1 Eastern time with another episode. Thank you, Henry, again for sharing your story and your light with us all today. Absolutely phenomenal. Thank you to ID Technology, and thank you to ClearBridge for your support of the Coach's Corner podcast and all things Catch a Lift. Thank you, Lynn Coughlin, Henry Pompper, and Kaylee Nasiri for the work that you do to make this podcast possible week after week. And we thank the entire Catch a Lift team. And until next week, keep it real and stay Cal strong.